Royal Story. Part 1. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Kensington Palace as Princess Catherine stood before her bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting her elegant navy blue coat dress. The silk fabric felt smooth beneath her fingers as she smoothed down the perfectly tailored garment that had been specially chosen for today's important Westminster event. Her reflection showed a woman who had grown comfortable in her royal role, yet still carried that genuine warmth that had first captured the nation's heart years ago. Down the hallway, Prince William was having his own preparation ritual, though his was considerably more straightforward. He buttoned his crisp white shirt and reached for his favorite navy tie, the one Catherine had given him for their anniversary. The morning light streaming through the palace windows highlighted the slight silver threading that had appeared at his temples over the years, a testament to the weight of responsibility he carried as second in line to the throne. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the corridors as Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis were being helped into their formal attire by their nanny. George, now tall for his age, was learning to tie his own tie under careful supervision. His serious concentration as he worked through the steps reminded everyone present of his father at that age. Charlotte stood patiently as her hair was brushed into a neat style, occasionally offering helpful suggestions about which ribbon would look best with her dress. Little Louis, ever the spirited one, was bouncing on his toes with excitement about the day ahead, asking endless questions about what they would see and do. Catherine made her way to the children's rooms, her heels clicking softly on the polished floors. She had learned over the years that these family preparation moments were precious, often more meaningful than the public events themselves. As she entered Charlotte's room, she found her daughter standing before a full-length mirror, practicing her curtsy with the dedication of a young performer preparing for opening night. "Mummy, do you think the Queen would be proud of how I curtsy now?" Charlotte asked, her voice carrying that mixture of innocence and awareness that came with understanding her place in the royal family. Catherine knelt down to Charlotte's level, adjusting a small detail on her daughter's dress while choosing her words carefully. "I think she would be very proud of the kind, thoughtful young lady you're becoming," Catherine replied, her voice warm with maternal love. "Remember, it's not just about how perfectly we do things, but about how we treat the people we meet and the respect we show for the occasions that matter." Meanwhile, William was having his own heart-to-heart conversation with George in the next room. The young prince was struggling with his collar, frustrated by the formal requirements of royal life. William remembered his own childhood feelings about such events, the mixture of excitement and pressure that came with public appearances. "I know these clothes feel different from what you usually wear," William said, sitting on the edge of George's bed. "But today is special because we're representing our family and our country. When people see us, they see hope for the future." George nodded thoughtfully, his expression showing he was processing this responsibility in his own way. The family's private secretary appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand, ready to review the day's schedule one final time. The Westminster event was particularly significant, marking an important milestone in British cultural heritage. Representatives from around the Commonwealth would be present, along with dignitaries, artists, and community leaders who had contributed to the nation's rich tapestry of achievement. Louis, having been dressed and deemed presentable, ran to find his parents, his small feet pattering across the palace floors. His excitement was infectious, and even the usually composed household staff found themselves smiling at his enthusiasm. He had been practicing his handshake all week, determined to greet everyone properly, though his version of properly often included sharing interesting facts about his toy collection or asking visitors if they had ever seen a real dinosaur. As the family gathered in the palace's main corridor, their security team conducted final preparations. The route to Westminster had been carefully planned, with considerations for both safety and the opportunity for well-wishers to catch a glimpse of the royal family. The children's excitement was building, but so was their understanding of the day's importance. Catherine took one last look at her family, her heart swelling with pride and love. William caught her eye and offered that reassuring smile that had gotten them both through countless public appearances over the years. The children stood in a neat line, each wearing their formal attire with increasing confidence. The palace doors opened to reveal their waiting convoy, polished to perfection, and ready to transport the Wales family to one of London's most historic settings. Today would be another chapter in their ongoing story as working members of the royal family, representatives of tradition and hope for the future. As they stepped outside, the morning air carried the promise of a memorable day ahead, filled with ceremony, community, and the special magic that happened when the royal family connected with the people they served. The sleek black vehicles pulled away from Kensington Palace with practiced precision, their route through London carefully choreographed by the protection team. Prince William sat beside Catherine, both of them pointing out familiar landmarks. To the children, as the convoy made its way through the bustling city streets, the children pressed their faces to the windows, watching the world go by with the wonder that came from seeing their home city from this unique perspective. George was fascinated by the motorcycle officers who rode alongside their car, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. He asked his father detailed questions about the security procedures, showing an early interest in the logistics that made their public life possible. William patiently explained what he could, encouraging his eldest son's curiosity while maintaining appropriate discretion about security matters. Charlotte had brought along a small notebook where she had been practicing her signature, convinced that someone might ask for her autograph today. She showed her mother the careful loops and curves she had been perfecting, each letter written with the concentration of someone who understood that her name would one day appear on important documents. Catherine smiled at her daughter's preparation, remembering her own early days of adjusting to life in the public eye. Louis entertained everyone with his running commentary on the passing scenery, pointing out double-decker buses, interesting shop signs, and people walking their dogs. His enthusiasm was genuine and unfiltered, bringing lightness to what could have been a tense journey. The protection officers found themselves chuckling at his observations, their professional demeanor softening in the presence of such innocent joy. As they approached Westminster, the familiar spires and Gothic architecture came into view, creating a dramatic backdrop against the London sky. The area had been decorated with flags and flowers in preparation for the day's event, transforming the historic precinct into a celebration of British heritage and culture. Crowds had already begun to gather behind the security barriers, many holding small Union Jacks and hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal family. Catherine reviewed the day's program one final time, mentally preparing for the sequence of meetings, presentations, and ceremonial moments that lay ahead. She had learned over the years to balance genuine engagement with the necessary protocol, ensuring that every person they met felt valued and heard. Today's event would showcase various aspects of British cultural achievement, from traditional crafts to contemporary innovations. The convoy slowed as they approached the designated arrival point, where a red carpet had been laid out and official greeters were assembled in perfect formation. William straightened his tie and took a deep breath, the familiar pre-event calm settling over him. He had done this countless times before, but each occasion brought its own unique energy and significance. George looked out at the waiting crowd and asked quietly if he would need to make a speech. His parents reassured him that today was primarily about listening and learning, though he might be asked simple questions about his interests or school. Charlotte wondered aloud if there would be other children present, hoping to meet young people from different backgrounds and experiences. The security team's voice crackled through their communication devices, confirming that everything was in position for the arrival. The waiting officials adjusted their positions slightly, ensuring that the welcome would unfold with the dignity and precision that such occasions demanded. Representatives from various cultural organizations stood ready to present their work and share their stories with the royal family. As the lead vehicle came to a stop, the family took a collective breath, transforming from private individuals into public representatives. William reached over and squeezed Catherine's hand briefly, a small gesture of support and partnership that had become their ritual before stepping into the spotlight. The children sat up straighter, their earlier excitement now focused into the composed behavior they had been taught for public appearances. The door handles turned, and suddenly the sounds of the outside world rushed in. The murmur of crowds, the click of photographers' cameras, and the gentle rustling of flags in the Westminster breeze. This was the moment when their private family time ended and their public duties began, a transition they had all learned to navigate with grace. Lewis was the first to spot the children's choir that had been assembled to greet them, their young voices ready to perform a specially chosen song. His face lit up with genuine delight, and he turned to share his excitement with Charlotte, who was equally pleased to see other young people as part of the welcome ceremony. The family stepped out of their vehicle into the crisp London air, immediately surrounded by the pageantry and warmth of a carefully planned royal welcome. The historic buildings of Westminster provided a magnificent backdrop as they prepared to begin their engagement with the community leaders, artists, and dignitaries who had gathered to celebrate British culture and achievement. The day's real adventures were just beginning, with each moment offering new opportunities for connection, learning, and the special kind of magic that happened when the royal family stepped into their public role. The moment the Wales family stepped onto the red carpet, the Westminster courtyard came alive with respectful applause and the gentle clicking of professional cameras. Catherine's navy coat dress caught the morning light beautifully, while William's confident stride and warm smile immediately put the waiting officials at ease. The children walked beside their parents with remarkable composure, though their eyes sparkled with curiosity about everything unfolding around them. The first official to greet them was Mrs. Margaret Thornfield, the event's chief organizer, a woman in her 60s whose life's work had been dedicated to preserving British cultural heritage. She curtsied gracefully before extending her hand to William, her voice carrying decades of experience in managing significant cultural events. Your Royal Highnesses, welcome to what we believe will be a truly memorable celebration of our nation's creative spirit, she said, her words carefully chosen but delivered with genuine warmth. William responded with equal courtesy, expressing the family's pleasure at being part of such an important occasion. Charlotte immediately noticed the children's choir positioned nearby, their faces beaming with excitement despite their best efforts to maintain composure. The young singers, ranging in age from 8 to 14, represented schools from across London and had been rehearsing their special performance for weeks. Their conductor, an enthusiastic young woman named Sarah Collins, gave them an encouraging nod as the royal family approached. "Would you like to hear our song?" asked Emma, a 10-year-old with pigtails who had been designated as the choir's spokesperson. Her question was directed primarily at Charlotte and Lewis, though she glanced nervously at the adults for approval. Charlotte nodded eagerly, while Louis clapped his hands together with anticipation. The choir launched into a beautiful rendition of a traditional English folk song, their young voices blending harmoniously in the historic Westminster setting. George stood very still, clearly moved by the performance, while Charlotte swayed slightly to the rhythm. Lewis was fascinated by the hand gestures that accompanied the song, trying to copy them discreetly. When the performance concluded, Catherine stepped forward to speak with several of the young singers, asking about their schools and how long they had been part of their respective choirs. Her questions were thoughtful and personal, making each child feel seen and valued. One young boy shyly mentioned that he had written his own song about London landmarks, and Catherine encouraged him to continue developing his musical talents. William engaged with the choir director, learning about the challenges and rewards of working with young people in music education. Their conversation revealed his genuine interest in how arts programs could positively impact children's development and confidence. The director was pleasantly surprised by the depth of his knowledge about music education initiatives across the country. As they moved deeper into the event space, the family encountered the first of several exhibition areas showcasing different aspects of British cultural achievement. Master craftsman Henry Ashworth, a traditional furniture maker whose family had practiced their trade for 5 generations, stood beside an exquisite hand-carved oak table that had taken him 6 months to complete. This table represents techniques that have been passed down through our family since the 1800s, he explained, his weathered hands moving lovingly across the wood surface. George was immediately fascinated by the intricate details carved into the table's legs, asking intelligent questions about the tools and methods used in such precise work. Charlotte was drawn to a nearby display featuring traditional textile arts where weaver Susan Martinez was demonstrating techniques used to create tapestries that told stories of British history. The rhythmic movement of her hands on the loom was almost hypnotic, and Charlotte watched intently as colorful threads transformed into recognizable patterns and images. "Could I try?" Charlotte asked politely, her eyes bright with interest. Susan was delighted to guide the young princess through a few basic movements, explaining how each thread contributed to the larger design. William and Catherine watched proudly as their daughter engaged so genuinely with the traditional craft. Louis discovered the most exciting attraction in his opinion, a demonstration of traditional British games and sports. Former Olympic athlete and now youth coach Michael Roberts had set up activities that children from different eras might have enjoyed. There were wooden hoops to roll, simple juggling exercises, and traditional playground games that had entertained British children for generations. These games might seem simple compared to today's technology, Michael explained to the gathered crowd, but they taught children important skills like coordination, fair play, and imagination. Louis was immediately eager to try everything, his enthusiasm infectious enough that several other children in the audience began asking if they could participate too. The family spent considerable time at each display, their genuine interest encouraging longer conversations and deeper connections than typically possible during brief ceremonial visits. Catherine found herself learning about traditional cooking methods from chef Patricia Williams, who had dedicated her career to preserving regional British recipes that might otherwise be forgotten. William discovered a passion for discussing sustainable building practices with architect James Morrison, whose work focused on combining traditional British architectural elements with modern environmental consciousness. Their conversation revealed shared concerns about preserving historical character while meeting contemporary needs. As they prepared to move to the next section of exhibits, the family had already created numerous memorable moments. The informal atmosphere had allowed for genuine exchanges, laughter, and learning that went far beyond typical royal protocol. Each person they had met felt valued and heard, while the children were gaining exposure to the rich diversity of skills and talents that contributed to their nation's cultural heritage. The Westminster event continued to unfold with remarkable warmth and genuine connection as the royal family moved into the contemporary arts section of the exhibition. Here, young British artists had been given the opportunity to display their work alongside established masters, creating an inspiring dialogue between traditional techniques and modern innovation. The space buzzed with creative energy as artists, many of them nervous but excited, prepared to share their passion with the royal visitors. 23-year-old artist Maya Patel stood beside her large canvas painting, a stunning piece that combined classical portraiture techniques with bold contemporary colors and themes. Her work explored the experience of growing up as a British Indian artist, weaving together cultural symbols from both her heritage and her London upbringing. When Catherine approached, Maya's initial nervousness quickly gave way to animated discussion about the challenges and joys of expressing complex identity through art. "Your technique is remarkable," Catherine observed, studying the intricate details that revealed themselves upon closer inspection. "How do you balance the traditional skills with such bold contemporary vision?" Maya's face lit up as she explained her creative process, describing how she had studied classical methods at art school while developing her own unique voice as an artist. George was particularly drawn to a sculpture installation created by teenage artist David Chen, who had used recycled materials to create powerful representations of environmental themes. The young sculptor, only slightly older than George himself, had transformed discarded plastic and metal into beautiful forms that conveyed important messages about sustainability and environmental responsibility. "This is brilliant," George said, with genuine admiration, walking around the sculpture to see it from different angles. "How did you know how to make all these pieces fit together so perfectly?" David beamed with pride as he explained his process, describing how he had spent months collecting materials and experimenting with different arrangements before achieving his final vision. Charlotte discovered her favorite section near the literature displays, where young poets and writers had been invited to share their work. 15-year-old poet Amara Johnson had written a beautiful series of verses about growing up in modern London, capturing both the challenges and the magic of city life through a teenager's eyes. Her words resonated with Charlotte, who had begun writing her own stories and poems in private. "I love how your poems make me feel like I'm walking through London with you," Charlotte told Amara, her comment sincere and thoughtful. The young poet's eyes filled with happy tears as she realized that the princess had truly understood and connected with her work. They discussed their favorite London locations and the ways that familiar places could inspire creative expression. William found himself engaged in fascinating conversations with technology innovators who were exploring how digital tools could enhance traditional British cultural preservation. Software developer Raj Singh had created an interactive program that allowed people to virtually explore historical British buildings that no longer existed, using advanced computer modeling to bring the past to life in remarkable detail. This could revolutionize how we teach history to young people, William observed, watching as the program seamlessly recreated a medieval London street scene. Children could actually walk through historical settings and understand how people lived in different eras. Raj was thrilled by William's enthusiasm and vision for the educational applications of his work. Louis had discovered the most entertaining section in his opinion, a demonstration area where traditional British folk musicians were teaching visitors simple instruments and songs. An elderly fiddler named Tom Murphy was patiently showing Louis how to hold a small violin, while folk singer Lisa Davies taught a group of children a traditional sea shanty that sailors had sung centuries ago during long ocean voyages. These songs told stories and kept people's spirits up during difficult times, Lisa explained, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who truly loved sharing musical traditions. Louis was fascinated by the idea that music could serve such practical purposes, and he threw himself into learning the rhythm and words with characteristic enthusiasm. Catherine was deeply moved by her conversation with community organizer Rachel Thompson, whose work focused on using arts programs to bring together people from different backgrounds across London. Rachel had organized painting workshops in refugee centers, poetry groups in senior centers, and music programs in schools facing budget cuts, demonstrating how creative expression could build bridges across cultural and generational divides. Art has this amazing power to help people connect with each other, Rachel explained, showing Catherine photos from various community events. When people create together, they discover how much they share, regardless of where they come from or what languages they speak. Catherine listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about how such programs could be expanded and supported. The family reconvened near a central display area where several Commonwealth representatives were showcasing how British cultural traditions had evolved and adapted in different countries around the world. Musicians from Canada, Australia, and South Africa had prepared a collaborative performance that demonstrated how traditional British folk tunes had been transformed by different cultural influences, creating new but recognizable variations. As the musicians tuned their instruments in preparation for their performance, the royal family gathered with other visitors to listen. The music that followed was both familiar and surprising, weaving together recognizable melodies with rhythms and harmonies that reflected the diverse places where British culture had taken root and grown in new directions. George, Charlotte, and Louis listened with rapt attention, beginning to understand how their family's heritage connected them to people and places around the world. The music served as a bridge between past and present, between tradition and innovation, creating a moment of shared appreciation that transcended formal protocol and touched something deeper about the meaning of cultural heritage and family legacy. As the Commonwealth musical performance concluded with enthusiastic applause, the royal family was guided toward the main ceremonial hall where the day's most significant presentations would take place. The historic Westminster Hall had been transformed into an elegant venue that honored both tradition and contemporary achievement, with banners representing different aspects of British cultural heritage hanging from the ancient rafters. Distinguished guests from across the cultural spectrum had assembled for this portion of the event. Renowned authors, celebrated musicians, master craftspeople, innovative designers, and community leaders who had dedicated their lives to preserving and advancing British cultural traditions. The atmosphere was one of respectful celebration, with everyone understanding they were participating in something truly special. Prince William took his place at the ceremonial podium, prepared to deliver remarks that would acknowledge the incredible work being celebrated today while emphasizing the importance of cultural heritage in shaping future generations. His speech had been carefully crafted to be both formal enough for the occasion and personal enough to reflect his family's genuine appreciation for what they had witnessed. Today we have been privileged to meet extraordinary individuals who demonstrate that British culture is not something preserved in museums, but a living, breathing force that continues to evolve and inspire, William began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. From the young artists reimagining traditional techniques to the master craftspeople ensuring ancient skills survive for future generations, we see culture as a bridge between past and future. Catherine watched proudly as her husband spoke, noting how naturally he connected the day's experiences to larger themes about community, creativity, and the responsibility that came with preserving cultural heritage for their children. The audience listened intently, many of them moved by the recognition their work was receiving from the royal family. George, Charlotte, and Louis sat with remarkable composure, occasionally whispering quietly to each other about the people they had met or the performances they had witnessed. Their genuine engagement throughout the day had impressed everyone present, demonstrating that the next generation of royals understood both the privilege and responsibility that came with their positions. Following William's remarks, several individuals were recognized for their outstanding contributions to British cultural life. Master clockmaker Eleanor Fitzgerald, who had spent 40 years restoring historical timepieces in government buildings, received acknowledgement for her meticulous work preserving mechanisms that told time for previous generations of public servants. Young composer Marcus Williams, barely out of university, was celebrated for his innovative work combining traditional British folk melodies with contemporary orchestral arrangements, creating music that spoke to both older and younger audiences. His latest piece had been performed by the London Symphony Orchestra to standing ovations, proving that classical traditions could find new life in modern interpretations. Community theater director Fatima Al-Rashid was honored for her work bringing professional quality dramatic productions to underserved neighborhoods, ensuring that children who might never otherwise experience live theater had opportunities to both watch performances and participate in productions themselves. Her programs had discovered and nurtured several young performers who had gone on to professional careers. Charlotte was particularly moved when children's book illustrator Jennifer Wong was recognized for her work creating picture books that featured diverse families and characters, helping all British children see themselves reflected in the stories they read. Jennifer's books had become beloved additions to libraries and classrooms across the country, opening conversations about inclusion and representation in literature. Louis perked up with interest when traditional toy maker Robert Harrison was acknowledged for his commitment to creating handcrafted wooden toys using methods passed down through generations. Robert's workshop had become a destination for families seeking alternatives to mass-produced plastic toys, and his apprenticeship programs were ensuring that traditional woodworking skills would continue for future generations. The ceremony's highlight came when the royal family was invited to participate in a collaborative art installation that would remain permanently displayed in Westminster. Artists had prepared a large canvas featuring the outline of a tree, with guests invited to add their own artistic touches, leaves, flowers, birds, or other elements that represented their contribution to British cultural heritage. Catherine picked up a brush and carefully painted a small rose, symbolizing growth and beauty that came from strong roots. William added a sturdy branch, representing the support that cultural institutions provided for individual artists and creators. George contributed a carefully painted sun, representing the light and energy that young people brought to traditional practices. Charlotte chose to paint a small book among the tree's leaves, symbolizing the stories and knowledge that passed from generation to generation. Louis, with some gentle guidance, painted a colorful butterfly, representing the joy and transformation that happened when people engaged with arts and culture. Their contributions joined hundreds of others, creating a beautiful collaborative artwork that captured the day's spirit of shared creativity and mutual inspiration. As the formal ceremonies concluded, the royal family mingled once more with the gathered artists, craftspeople, and community leaders. These final conversations were perhaps the most meaningful of the day, as the relaxed atmosphere allowed for deeper exchanges about challenges, hopes, and dreams for the future of British cultural life. The day had exceeded everyone's expectations, creating connections and memories that would last far beyond the immediate event. Young artists had been inspired by recognition from the royal family, established masters had felt valued for their life's work, and community leaders had seen their efforts to share culture with diverse populations acknowledged and celebrated. As the Westminster cultural celebration drew to a close, the golden afternoon light streamed through the historic windows, casting warm patterns across the stone floors where so much British history had unfolded over the centuries. The royal family gathered with the event organizers for final photographs and farewell conversations, but the atmosphere remained relaxed and genuine, rather than formally ceremonial. Mrs. Margaret Thornfield approached the family one last time, her eyes bright with satisfaction at how beautifully the day had exceeded all expectations. "Your Royal Highnesses, your genuine engagement with our artists and craftspeople has made this day truly special," she said, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who had witnessed something remarkable. "The young people especially will remember this encouragement for the rest of their lives." Catherine smiled as she watched Charlotte exchanging contact information with young poet Amara, promising to share some of her own writing attempts. The two girls had discovered a shared love for creating stories about ordinary moments that held extraordinary meaning, and their connection had grown throughout the day from polite introduction to genuine friendship. George was deep in conversation with teenage sculptor David Chen, discussing plans to visit David's recycling-based art workshop during the school holidays. William listened proudly as his eldest son demonstrated both curiosity about the artistic process and awareness of the environmental messages embedded in David's work. These connections between the royal children and young artists represented exactly the kind of meaningful relationships that could inspire future collaboration and support. Louis had charmed everyone by insisting on saying personal goodbyes to each of the folk musicians who had taught him songs earlier in the day. His enthusiastic hugs and promises to practice the violin made even the most reserved adult smile. Tom Murphy, the elderly fiddler, presented Louis with a child-sized wooden whistle, explaining that it had been made by his own grandfather decades earlier. "This whistle has brought joy to 3 generations of my family," Tom said, placing the small instrument carefully in Louis's hands. "I hope it will bring music and happiness to your family as well." Louis clutched the whistle reverently, understanding that he had received something truly precious. As the family prepared for departure, William took a moment to speak privately with several of the community organizers whose work had particularly impressed him throughout the day. Rachel Thompson, who had coordinated arts programs across diverse London neighborhoods, found herself discussing potential future collaborations with royal charitable foundations. "Your work demonstrates something essential about culture," William told her earnestly. "It's not enough to preserve traditions if we don't also ensure that everyone has access to participate and contribute. Your programs prove that cultural heritage becomes stronger when it includes more voices, not fewer." Catherine had been equally moved by her conversations with the various artists and craftspeople, particularly the women who had balanced creative careers with community service and family responsibilities. Master weaver Susan Martinez had shared stories about the challenges of maintaining traditional craft skills in a fast-paced modern economy, while also expressing hope about renewed interest from younger generations. "Today has shown us that there are so many people working quietly but passionately to keep our cultural heritage alive," Catherine observed to the gathered organizers. "Your dedication deserves not just recognition, but ongoing support and resources to continue this vital work." The children had each been given special gifts to commemorate the day, handmade items created by the artists they had met, along with books and materials that would allow them to explore their newfound interests at home. George received a beginner's guide to sustainable art practices. Charlotte was given a beautiful journal bound in traditional bookbinding leather, and Louis proudly carried his new whistle, along with a collection of traditional British folk songs, transcribed especially for young musicians. As the family walked back toward their waiting convoy, they were surrounded by the warmth and appreciation of everyone who had participated in the day's events. The barriers that had seemed so formal upon arrival now felt more like gathering spaces where friends were saying goodbye after a wonderful celebration. Young Maya Patel approached Catherine one final time, her earlier nervousness completely replaced by confident gratitude. "Thank you for really looking at my paintings and understanding what I was trying to express," she said. "Knowing that my work connected with you gives me courage to continue developing my artistic voice." The children's choir that had welcomed them earlier had reassembled to perform one final song as the family departed, a traditional blessing song that had been sung at important occasions for generations. Their young voices carried across the Westminster courtyard, creating a moment of pure beauty that seemed to capture all the day's themes of tradition, innovation, and hopeful continuity. As the royal family settled back into their vehicles for the return journey to Kensington Palace, they carried with them not just memories of a successful public engagement, but genuine inspiration from the talented, dedicated people they had met. The children chattered excitedly about their favorite moments, while William and Catherine reflected on the meaningful connections they had made and the important work they had witnessed. London's evening lights began to twinkle as their convoy made its way through the city streets, but the glow from the day's experiences would last much longer. The Westminster cultural celebration had achieved something special, creating authentic moments of connection, inspiration, and mutual appreciation that reminded everyone present why cultural heritage mattered and how it could continue to flourish when nurtured by passionate, committed communities. As they approached the familiar gates of Kensington Palace, the family knew they would return home changed by the day's encounters, carrying new understanding about the remarkable creativity and dedication that flourished across their nation, and renewed appreciation for their role in supporting and celebrating the people who kept British culture vibrant and alive for future generations.